Hello and welcome to the Esoteric Software stream. My name is Erika and today we will be continuing the rig on the Dinosaur that we started the previous time. Last time we rigged the face and the tail. Today we're going to continue the work on the rest of the body and hopefully add also a test animation. So as last time, I'll do a brief introduction of what this is. On our Spine unofficial Discord, we are having a challenge where everyone can try to rig and animate this dinosaur that was drawn by Victor Debatisse and cut by Martin Hauw, who is Dan Elcoa here on the stream. And I am continuing the rig to inspire you, but also in case you want, you can just grab the file that I've pinned in the chat here and just use it to create your own animations. With this, I'll show you that we got some movement of the head. We had a test for the neck and one for the tail where it was moving like this, but I remember, okay, also doing this other animation here. So today we're going to rig also the other parts. I feel like these were some major ones. So we could move and open and close here the jaws, and we could also move the entirety of the head and have it a little bit 3D-ish. Now I'm probably going to do the body to connect that too. So it's just this piece, and then probably I'm going to move into leg and arms territory. Okay, the body is not actually so complex. We already have these parts in place, but what is not following is basically just this piece. And maybe I could get these pieces to also follow along, but not necessarily because they are like kind of one single solid piece. I guess that I'll be creating the mesh. Edit mesh. Okay, it is dimmed. I don't need it dimmed. I'll attempt what I've been attempting as of late, which is to trace. I think I have it set to the defaults, probably 20, 50, 50, yeah. And I'm gonna accept this, but I'm going to remove all of the vertices that are not gonna be particularly visible. Just these ones. I'm going to remove these two and space these out. Okay, I'll try with these at first without actually adding internal vertices, and if I see that it's not deforming nicely, I am going to add those internal vertices. So I'll start with this super simple mesh that only has an outer hull, and then weights, bind this mesh so it follows body here and the hips. So it starts from here. I'm going to keep it here, fine. Then I'm going to extend it. I'm going to compress it. Then I'm going to, I don't know, move it up. Yeah, maybe move it down. Okay, to get an overall idea of what I am doing. So the automatic weights kind of are nice. I'm going to try to change them a little bit. I'll attach this a lot. So if I have it be controlled a lot by the front bone, let's look at the part that we can see the most, which is this. This part is rather disappointing, yeah. It feels flat. Okay, so I'll be changing this mesh. I'm going to slice this in 3 parts so it can also curve. I'm going to add these vertices like this to have sort of a cage so that then I can decide how much each part is being influenced by one or the other. For example, these I want it to be more attached, these two. Okay, I don't think I'm gonna be able to move this up and down unless I spend the time to connect also all of these parts, which I'm not sure that is actually good or required. So I'm going to not do that for now. So within this range we got a bit more movement and it still feels connected. I should also get this part of the leg to connect to the body, which we said has a missing part, so it's a little less easy to animate, which is why it's very important to always draw the parts in the mess that they're going to occupy, even though they are mostly covered. You never know. I'm going to try to rig these legs since we were talking about it. Edit the mesh. I'm going to be tracing this. Click OK. And I think that the result here is rather good. I'm going to isolate it for a moment so I can see better. And we kind of want to have vertices near the pivot points on our mesh. So I simply added 2 vertices, one here and one here. I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Would be very sweet. Binding 1, 2, 3, these 3 bones. I'm going to click bind. So I think I'm going to try to weight it first so it works as it is, and then I'm going to do a little patch where I duplicate this mesh and then I expand it kind of manually. Let's pause the animation. I'm going to get it into a bend. I want to also turn this. This is perfect, I think. Yeah, don't think I have to do anything in particular. I'm going to play this animation, which is not gonna be perfect because it didn't even bother to make it looping. Okay, so this part needs to be influenced more by the knee. Maybe an in-between like this is gonna be fine. These parts here likely need to be 100% on the body. Top, it's good. I was looking at this area. Okay, then it rotates like this. Yeah, it looks fine. So I'm going to duplicate this mesh here. Okay, the duplicate I think is going to be in front. I'm going to move it down, and then I'm going to change this so that we have a wider range of motion for these. Something like this. Let's see. So now it should be basically the same. Okay, but the leg is covered a bit better. I should change this a little bit. It's not this. Okay, so they are similar. I'm going to select these two, choose new, IK constraint. I have to reparent this bone, which is the foot back. Okay. And parent it to the root to be able to create a target with it. Same here, this is going to be foot front. And parent it to the root again. Okay, so then I can select these two, choose new, IK constraint, target it there. I have a foot back, and I will have also a foot front. I wanted to verify a little bit of the range. Okay, one is not following completely. Did I create the IK for this or not? I did not. Must have undone. Okay, IK constraint here, foot front, perfect. Then I'll try to move this, and ideally would also get the legs to point in that direction. Now I'm going to get the various parts to follow the correct bones because they aren't. Oh, so this is an example of something that was made nicely because basically it rotates perfectly and it's covered, I would say, most of the time. Ideally, if this ended up in a rounder way, then it would cover even more perfectly. I basically don't need to add a mesh. However, to have perfect coverage, I can add a mesh. So I'm going to turn this into a mesh. Let's try tracing. Tracing worked. I'm going to remove one extra vertex. Bind, and I bind to both. Maybe this is enough. Let's see the weight. Yeah, I guess this is okay. I could maybe rig this part instead to rotate, although it is a mechanical piece, so I think I'm going to move them in a block as they are. I could add maybe a bone to control each, but I already know that I won't particularly use them, so I don't think I will bother. Again, because on this side they are all one piece. I'm back in setup. I'm going to rig the other leg, this nice muscle here. Added the mesh, trace. I just removed two. Okay, I guess that just to favor some nice deformation, I'm going to force the geometry this way so that most of it can stay attached and in place on top. Because in the end, I just need it to basically be attached here and be connected also here. So I'm going to bind it to these two and then test the range. I'm going to change the weight. What have I done? Oh, okay, I forgot to bind the hips. Did I? I did. Okay. And then I weighted it on the wrong thing. I weighted to the correct thing. I was surprised it was moving so much. Okay, that's good. So I want this part definitely to be anchored, and I want this part to actually also be anchored. Maybe like this. So see, having this test animation, it's easier to check if I have applied the right weights or not. Influence in this instance. I don't think it should have also any foot influence. Concerning video games, more vertices is not recommended, I think. Well, not too much, I suppose. So, fun fact, having more vertices is actually not really that much of an issue, as it is adding tons of deformation vertices. So, it all compounds. So, in the end, if you use too much at one stage, it piles up, and then you're consuming lots of resources. So, having slightly more vertices is not bad per se, is when you combine it with also using tons of constraints, adding tons of keys, adding tons of deformations, basically no deformations, direct deformation if we want stuff to work on mobile, on your grandma's device, for example, which usually is very old. For this reason, I try to give a good example where I don't use many vertices, because if you don't think it's possible yourself, if I don't show you, how are you going to imagine that you could try to do that, right? Okay, here I think I'm going to keep it this way, and maybe this. I want this part to be mostly rigid and just deform a little bit. And then I'm going to connect the leg a bit more instead. Usually, spine is not the bottleneck of your project because other things in the game can worsen the overall performance. But you know, if you have something that is lighter, it means that you can have more of cute animated stuff around, like in the background, etc. So why not try to be conservative and still get a good result, so you can have more, rather than having something like one thing that is super complex, a ton of stuff, but you can only have that one thing. So instead, you can get as much as you want, and it's also less work for you. Okay, I'm going to trace here. Ooh, good tracing result. I think I'm going to move this as a block. Then I'm going to move this here and remove this one. Then instead, I'm going to have something so that the fingers here can bend more. Here, I think that I prefer to have this vertex that was here, or maybe I'll keep this one, but I'll move this one. I'm gonna leave it here for now. This, I don't need. I'm going to move this here. Okay. This anchors this part, so I think I need that. And this one, I'm not sure, but it's gonna be fine to have that there. This I'm going to move closer. This more here. Here I need to have this to get a nicer flow of triangles. And usually I add 1, 2 here, but in this case, as you see, it makes no difference, so I'm not gonna add that. Maybe I could get one here, so that you see the triangles here are going to bend nicely, whereas before they were doing this. Maybe it works also here, but I don't think I'm gonna like how it deforms around there. Okay, can I get this? I think this is gonna be fine. Okay, let's try to bind it, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to change it again. I don't think it should bend this much, definitely not. So we shall avoid the breaking of the poor foot of this animal, but the range is really nice. I'm going to test this also like this. That is pretty good. I think I want these two to stretch so that they always reach the target. Maybe, or not. Maybe not. No, maybe not. But I want to fix a little bit whatever is happening here, whatever I did to these poor bones. So I'm going to press this key and then change the weights. So of course I'm never gonna use this extreme for stuff, but I want to make sure that this is going to be nice for me or for anyone after me who uses this. So I need to change the weights a bit. I think this is going to be like this. So much for connecting those parts. I'm not gonna be doing that. Okay, possibly these are going to look nicer if I do this. Okay, let's see, because this was the ultra stretched version. I want to see it without. Okay, because here it was connected super nicely, and as soon as I give up on that, we can see there's a little bit of border that stayed the same color, so I guess it's not supposed to overlap in this way. Maybe I placed the pivot for these in the wrong point, or it's just not supposed to stretch, because otherwise it should be like around here, which is not something that could be reached with a bone, but it will look nice. Like this, I think it's perfect. I have determined that the pivot here is not of much use, so I'm gonna attempt to move that, which is going to destroy most of the work that I did here. I'm going to lock bones and images compensation. I'm gonna enable that. Let's see. Okay, then here I'm gonna move. That is not good. I'm going to delete here these. And now I can move it freely. Oh yeah, I'm going to rotate this, make it shorter. Okay, so now I moved a bunch of bones, and these bones were affecting some meshes. If I were to change the weights on these, you'd see that now the weights move in setup. If you remember, weights that move in setup are no good. And this happened because the weights remember the previous position of the bones. So now I have to update this position that is stored within the mesh like this. And I'm also gonna do it here. Was this attached to that? No. Okay. Was this attached to the leg? No. Okay. So only these two meshes require the update. Well, nothing should have changed here. So this is still good within the range of how I want to be able to move it. I think it's great. Let's see this. It's worse now. It made sense before. I hate it. But I also translated that. I forgot. Never mind then. So there is some shrinking that is happening on the knee here. Is this acceptable? I don't think it is. Can we get the shrinking not to happen, please? If we apply more of 100% of this bone and only limit that deformation here in this inner part, which makes basically useless all those other vertices above there. in these cases, the best situation is where instead of having this ending like this, we have very clean cut also here, and here it overlaps like a perfect circle. Then it is a piece of cake. Now sometimes people will send you files like this, and then I guess we can also work with this. It's the problem is just going to be that the range is going to be a tad limited. See, because here it ends early. See, that's the part that ends. I'm gonna rotate it slower so you can see. Okay, that's our mesh dance here. Then I rotate it, and maybe if I change the weights, I can limit a bit this effect. Okay? So I'm going to basically keep them rigid. Best designs allow you to leave the things rigid as they are. So it can bend more for sure, but it doesn't look fantastic. I mean, great job on the repainting here, so that is actually good. It gives us some range. I guess for this illustration, this is perfectly acceptable. So it's just if you want the legs to be perfectly straight, then you want to have some good joints overlapping super nicely. To increase the range, you can do that. If you don't care about that, then this is more than enough. Oh, I forgot to recreate the case, so I'm going to do that now. All right. The problem is still in the design because it has these little hooks here. Those complicate things. Normally knees don't have spikes, so usually that is not a problem, but it's something that you'll also encounter when you rig, for example, armors or robots that sometimes have some knee coverings. Oof, those are very annoying to rig and they don't give you full range. When you have that sort of thing happening, like if you want to have that knee spike still in place, then what you could do to preserve this could be to also have a little bone like this that you can use to adjust the angle of just this part. Now I'm gonna demonstrate since I've been talking about this. So it would work like this. So you get the knee here, then you decide to make it straight, and when it is straight it goes over like this and it's kind of ugly. Now in this case it's very organic, so it doesn't feel too wrong. But if you needed to adjust this, you would change the rotation here. This would have 100% of the weights here. Usually this is a separate image. Best results are achieved when this image is separate, so you can orient it perfectly. And then you see you adjust the rotation this way. Not ideal in this case. See, because this way, yeah, you can adjust it. I remember one of the first projects that I worked on, I had a transform constraint that had an in-between position between this bone and this bone to not have it to manually control that. And now I'm not sure I would have done it this way. But yeah, back then I remember that it made sense. So yeah, you could do this for the knee. Now in this case, I don't care. I don't think it adds that much to this specific dinosaur, so I'm gonna remove it. But you could use that in some other kinds of projects when you have the knee problem, which is something that happens. Let's look at other robotic parts, maybe with these arms. I don't think this is going to need much. Okay, this brings back memories, because one of the first projects that I had to work on had this sort of perspective bullets, and it had to have this joint that moved, and it was very difficult to make because, as you see, it is rotating but in perspective, so it's not gonna be perfect once again. So this is another little beast. Okay, I'm gonna be doing this first because it's easier, and then I'm gonna be doing the most difficult one, so we see an easy example at first, and then we complicate it. Okay, let's mesh this, edit the mesh, and trace. I feel like trying to rig different art styles, also with limitations, it can be very formative. So I would advise you to try to rig also something like this, or to animate it to get some experience, especially if you're still new to Spine, trying out these different rigs, etc. And I think that this needs to be cutting the connection that this has there. Maybe this works. Okay, so I had this arm done. I'm gonna attach it and also attach it to the hips too, which is actually the body front. I'm gonna test the range. I'm gonna attach it here at first, and then I'm going to rotate these parts. Okay, for this I love to do these. Oh my, it's so cute. Okay, I'm gonna leave it like this. I was surprised by the cuteness, overwhelmed. The range is basically already good. I don't need to do any changes. So I'm going to add just the missing keys here and play the animation. That is good. Then we move to that part of armor that I said would be a tad difficult, more difficult. So this is gonna be rigid, it's not gonna be changing, etc. These are also gonna be rigid, basically. So the part that is going to be truly difficult is, am I going to move this in setup? No. Okay. Moving it out of the way here. It is going to be this little gear here, because we said it's not possible to rotate it nicely. So what are we going to be doing? I'm gonna attempt, I don't know, I'll freestyle it because I don't know myself. I'm just gonna try stuff and see if it works. Okay, create. I think I'm going to try to separate this side from the top side. Maybe like this, so it stays attached to the hand, and I don't think I'm needing these things here. Maybe I can get it to work like this, and I'm going to bind this and this together. I am in setup, yeah. Let's do a test of the range. This. Okay, rotating it this way doesn't give me a good result, so that's a first bad thing that is happening to this. Ah, yeah, right. Maybe I remove these keys since I don't need them for now. Okay, so I can still see what is happening here. And then I want it to rotate the opposite way. So far, it's a complete disaster. Ah, the weights are wrong, so it's not surprising actually. Okay, first I'm going to set the weights so they are 100%, oh, maybe here. Okay, then let's figure out when it is here. How do I, okay, I think this is the maximum because it's kind of a mechanical piece. It cannot actually go there, but whatever, I'm gonna leave it there. Okay, so here I need to make sure that these parts are connected, so I'm going to select them and make them connected. Maybe like this. This I'm going to leave alone. Okay, this kind of faked it. I could maybe get it to be like this. If we suppose that it's like of those coverings that is actually soft, then I guess that this could work as it is, plus it's a part that is going to be mostly hidden. What I don't like is that clearly there's this triangle here and it's destroying the lines that I do have there. So I wonder if I can improve a little bit this by adding a vertex here so it follows more the lines that we have in here. When they overlap like this, I think I'm gonna get a better bending of these parts. Okay, let's check it out now. Before it was like this, kind of ugly, and now it's like this, straighter. Yeah, I guess that I prefer this version. Clearly, it's not gonna be able to ever rotate the arms this far, to my dismay, because I love having range. Fingers will follow some similar logic. So mesh, edit the mesh, let's trace this. Okay, I am going to accept this, but I'm going to modify it once again. Could have done just a new mesh, to be honest. And the key to get a good deformation in this case is to also follow the internal lines that we do have here. So these, and these that follow the deformation that this is going to have. I also need an extra vertex here. That's a ton of vertices for a finger. I hope it pays off. 1 and 2. Can I do it with less on this finger in the back? I am going to attempt that. Maybe just one here and here. We're gonna see. I'm going to remove the extra vertices here. Yeah, let's see what happens. It's jello. Here it's actually not bad because it's following the drawing. So the result for the back is also rather good. Let's see the weights. I want to see them in the maximum bend state. Yeah, I guess this is fine. Maybe I can get this to be more like this. But then it does that. Okay, yeah, I guess that's fine. What about this in the front? I'm gonna change the weights. Well, it's a mechanical object, so I guess it needs to stay firm in place. For the part that needs to be able to bend, let's see if doing this helps or not. I think I'm gonna get this to be like this. Ah, on these fingers I got range. I like how they look like tiny crow heads. They look like crows. Okay, so for the parts here, we said that this part is gonna be mostly rigid except for these parts on top, and definitely we can get this to deform a bit. So for this, I'm going to turn it into a mesh. Let's try tracing. Tracing is doing things. I'll remove the extra vertices that are absolutely useless. And then I want to separate the crate and this part from the parts on top that are going to be a bit more squishy. Okay, I'm going to turn this into a mesh too. Okay, and remove some useless vertices, but add more vertices that will convey the bending of the parts. I want them connected also nicely, so more like this. Slicing it in threes, and here I don't particularly need this to do stuff. So let's see what happens. I'll bind this here and here. I'll bind this to this, and I think the hips. Then I want to add a physics constraint to this, so that then it's doing this. Then what I want to happen is, for the part of the hips that are down here, I want it to be rigid there. For the part on top, I want to have some smoothing so it deforms a bit more, but I don't want the crates to move. Then I want this part to also have new physics constraint, so that it also reacts to the overall movement here. Okay, I realized that I forgot to add the hips, because this part here needs to be on the hips. Yeah, and this part down here will have an in-between of hips and tissue. Okay, so that then it can rotate in a soft way. Okay, I think I'm going to split this into two bones so that I can get more of these to move with Fibonacci split, so that this bone is going to be tinier. No, maybe not. Split two nested bones. Okay, yeah, so it ends where this ends. That's good. And I'm going to bind this here. And in my case, I'm going to add physics so that I can just watch it move. I then want this to be controlled by the orange bone, whereas this one should be controlled violet bone. So it should actually be that this is completely controlling the violet bone. This should be an in-between. If instead of messing with this, I get this to also, let's see, scale? Scale is doing things just a tiny bit. How about shearing? Just a tiny bit. How about translating? Yeah, translating is nice. Whatever. I'm gonna leave them like this. I'm happy with the bouncing of the other parts. Maybe I'll get the rotation to be less. If I turn off rotation, it still does things. I need to attach the horn front to this body of his. So right now it isn't attached. These also need to be attached. This arm definitely needs to be rigged. I forgot about it. Let's do it. Mesh, edit mesh, trace. Okay, then I'm gonna create here these to separate this part. Bind this. So I was doing this. I need this to be connected as it is. I guess I'm gonna leave that like that. Let's see if I rotate it in the opposite direction. So I sort of got the perspective going there. Here, maybe because this is flesh, I could add a little vertex here and just get it to stretch. And here, so I can preserve this part. Wow, if this is muscle, it's very exposed. And maybe it's scar tissue though. Okay, and like that, that part is attached to. We might have all the pieces. I am noticing now that the body here actually has very little range for moving, because when this leg moves here, it reveals here a missing part. So I think I'm gonna duplicate again this body, and with the copy, which I'm going to move down one place, I'm going to stretch this to cover the missing part. Okay, so now the legs always cover that part. The basic rig here is done. I want to maybe add some perspective here to the parts on top. I could make it so that the part in front stays anchored, but the part in the back follows a certain perspective that I can get with a bone to make it easy. So it's like something that if I want, I can animate, but if I don't want, I'm just gonna forget it and it's gonna be fine. So I'm gonna create a new bone, maybe in the back here, to represent something that I can move. And that's going to be the body perspective, or rather that's gonna be cargo perspective. Okay, and then I'm gonna get these parts and this to be completely parented to cargo perspective. And this, I'm going to bind them. I'm not necessarily gonna get them to respect that cargo things. And down. So first limitation that I have is definitely this movement here, that it's not something possible, mostly because of this horn here in the back. So let's see, can I get that horn to be maybe a mesh, and then I'll bind it to the cargo, and maybe this. No, this is gonna make it bounce. So maybe this, and I'm going to change the weights. Actually, I need to also edit the mesh, I think. Where it detaches, I'm going to select it. I'm going to make sure that this part is going to be attached, and then here I'm simply gonna smooth it. So now we have some fake perspective. I don't particularly enjoy too much here the fact that this is doing this. I think I'm gonna try to get it to be as rigid as possible. So I'm gonna get this to be fully there, this to be stronger there. Okay, it detaches too much, maybe something like this. So it only gets ugly when it reaches this point. So I guess for these, I'm gonna need to do this. For these in the back, I won't bother. And for these, I'm gonna get this to get a little bit of the cargo perspective. Okay, of course, the problem here is that this part starts to detach, so I then attach it like this. So I have some fake perspective on top. That was easy. Maybe the fact that this crate is deforming so much is not so good. Can I change the structure here? So this should not be made of jello, it should be rigid, like this. So here I need to get it to not have a cargo perspective at all. So the ideal outcome would have it to be more like this. So it all deforms. We can't have that. So the next best thing is to make it stay rigid, but then this is the form so much. Need to limit that too. Oh, it's gonna be like this. So something tiny that gets a little bit of effect, I suppose. Just to use little and sparingly, because all these parts are actually one single piece, so there's no real perspective to be had, unfortunately. Sneeze! Oh my, the sneezing would also be so cool. I'm gonna make him sneeze. Okay, sneezing is like and then choo. Okay, so I'm gonna be doing first charging the sneeze, starting pose, sneezing, then I'm gonna get the sneezing done pose first. So I'm using a pose to pose approach. When the air comes out, dust from the ground is moved. Can we move the dust on the ground? I think we can move these grass. I'm gonna rig the grass to make that possible. Do I need anything else beyond this? Oriented like this. Bind to what? To nothing, because I did not create the bones. I'm gonna create a bone as a child of the root here, so it controls the leaf. Leaf. Then I'm going to bind this here and to the root. And then I'm going to change the weight so that this part is attached to the root. Okay, I'm not gonna consider timing at first. I'm gonna move the keys all close together. Actually, the timing improved like this. Very funny. And then it does this. So this should happen super fast, actually. I'm going to separate the curves for translation, for rotation. Translate. I want it more in the back, like this. And then it looks more down, but it cannot go beyond a certain amount because then it detaches. It's different curves. Well, that is so convenient that all these parts all get animated for me. So pose 1, pose of the charging. I think this maybe needs to be moved more. Okay, because it's getting ready to sneeze. Panic, and then sneezing happens. True, so it needs to go down with different timing. A kitty translation. Okay, when it's ready to sneeze, it goes here. Kind of gets stabbed by these horns. These horns are in the wrong position, so they should be in front of everything. See it now? Yeah. Now that I know, I can move it slightly more up, maybe like this, a ridiculous amount. And do I rotate this? Oh, like this. That's the maximum. I'm gonna add missing keys. Okay. And then slowly closes the mouth and then comes back to the original position. So I am going to key this. Okay, I want this pose to be longer, so I'm going to shift this. Here I'm just going to rotate maybe the neck a tiny bit more. Let's offset some parts. Can I make it more expressive by also moving the tail? Be doing this. And then this. And then goes back to normal. actually want to move a little bit here and rotate it like this. Maybe a smaller movement. I sort of want the hips to be able to translate separately. So that maybe here I can just move it this way. And here like this. Okay, so now I have a more circular motion of the hips. Okay, now I'm doing the little bits. Like for example, when he goes up, he's not simply going up, he's like shaking going up. Like he's trying to hold it in, but then it just happens. You should sort of have like that, a true face. Oh, like that! Okay, I just discovered that my rig can do more than I would have expected. Oh, that's the perfect pose for sneezing. And I said I wanted to edit this to be a bit softer, so I'm gonna be doing that. We finished rigging the dinosaur. We also did a small sneezing animation. As said in the beginning, this is part of a challenge on the unofficial Spine Discord. You can download the PSD, but you can also reuse the rig that I just did. Whenever I have a new project, maybe a new challenge is out, you will still hear from me. So I will post this result on the Spine Discord, the sneezing little one. I think it's super nice to take part in this sort of challenges as a community, so really do try them out. And see you next time. Bye bye!